on through normal course.
No, as far as soliciting comments from the public, excuse me, before assisting the city attorney in writing this particular law, nothing was really solicited through the public, although public comment is out there. It's everywhere. During my research on all the jurisdictions that have these types of laws, there's public comment, and I'm sure that public comment is the same whether it's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as it is in Washington, D.C. The public is really expressing a discontentment with the fact that people are out there. There's a study indicating that 35% of, AAA did the study, 35% of drivers are more afraid of driving now than they were 5 years ago, just because of the distracted driving issues that are out there.
Actually, the public comment mechanism does vary by city, and many cities actually have multiple readings of the ordinance. And what I wanted to ascertain from you is if you would have any objections to adopting A this evening, but trying to, through the public comment process, promoting through the city the intent to have additional language and to solicit additional input, perhaps through what we might use as a study session. Would you have any objections to that?
I'm taking this as meaning that the chief will answer that question.
That's a good observation. We would defer that question to the city attorney for all guidance, or we're willing to go along with whatever the council directs, and the city attorney would recommend that.
Mrs. Bloom?
Mayor, under our charter, there is no requirement for first reading and second reading. I know that it is required by other communities. We do not have that requirement. However, the reason why we did provide both versions was so that council, if you wanted to, you could postpone the version B, which is, of course, the recommended version as articulated so eloquently by Lieutenant Livingston. You certainly can do that at a later time if you wish to obtain additional public comment. There is no requirement for it. Legally, you could pass the version tonight. There is a 10-day after publication requirement before the ordinance would be in effect.
Did I hear you mention the Traffic Safety Committee in your comments?
Well, I just brought it up as I was doing my research. I approached the Traffic Safety Committee on it. And
our City of Troy Committee?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, which is residents.
Yes, and they indicated that it sounded like a great idea, but they had concerns about, again, the eating portion of it and how that was addressed. If you're eating a French fry, that was the example that was given to me, and I assured them, well, that's not the intent of this at all. Basically, it's if you're eating and to such a degree that you can't maintain control of that vehicle, that's not using reasonable due care and caution.
Okay. So if we wanted to see the comments from those people, they'd be in the minutes of the Traffic Safety Committee?
Actually, I kind of asked that after the meeting.
Oh, okay.
It was just a side note while I was doing my research. I thought
okay.
I'd just bounce some ideas off them, basically.
Thank you. Further questions for?
Thank you.
No? Okay. Thank you. We have the two versions in front of us here. One of them is, as I said, matches up more closely with what the state has just passed, and the other one is the more restricted one.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Beltrame.
While I understand Councilman Howleck's concern, the additions were made based on actual citations in Troy. And it is Troy where we live and where we try and keep things safe. And therefore, I would move that Chapter 106 of the Code of the City of Troy to be amended to add Section 3.2b. A copy of this ordinance shall be attached to the original minutes of this meeting.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Beltrame, seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin, that we approve.
That's the right one, right?
Pardon?
That's the version B, right?
Yes. I was going to ask for clarification to make sure here. That resolve the Chapter 106 of the City Code of the City of Troy be amended to add Section 3.2b. A copy of this ordinance shall be attached to the original minutes of this meeting. Discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman Kerwin.
I agree with Councilmember Beltramini. This is a safety concern. That's not just the numbers of citations that have been issued. It's not just the referential material, which included statistics, but it's also the fact that we have a diminished staff to address crashes and other strong considerations. The more we can do to make our city safe, the better it is for all of us who reside within the city, work within the city, and travel through. So I do support 32B and will be voting yes.
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman Beltramini?
It's the wrong version,
It
right?
is. It is the wrong version.
It's the wrong
Yes,
version.
it's-
So I
it's
need
the-
to amend my own motion.
It's the first one. Yeah, that's when.
I went back and I was like, that's not enough sections. So I would amend
Right.
to add sections 1.2005 and 5.14C and renumbered as reflected. So substitute the first motion for the second.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin, that we substitute the first motion as printed with adding sections 1.20.05 and 5.14C and renumbered as reflected in the attached document. Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard.
The intent here should be, really should, I agree, it should be public safety, and therefore our interest is prohibiting people from being distracted. It's not, should not be to pass the ordinance hastily or to pass an ordinance that is not effectively communicated to the public or does not actively solicit input, and I do mean actively solicit input from the community. I think signs as you enter the city will help, but since we have an interstate going through the city, perhaps signs at the Michigan border alerting people that when they enter the city of Troy, about 60 miles up the road, they will have to I don't even know how you make a sign that I suppose I would hope there would be a sign that would be able to be large enough so as you could put whatever it is that you're intending to do. There's a presumption, I would hope, there's a presumption that is made by the state of Michigan when they issue a driver's license that you're going to focus on driving the vehicle when you're driving. And you know, we can think of all number of different things that are don't actually show an active motion, but an active motion can include something that doesn't externally show. And what I mean by that is somebody could be deep in thought, somebody could be in prayer. And how in the world do you prove that? If they cause an accident, that in and of itself is a problem, and it shows that they're not operating the motor vehicle with full attention to the road. So in short, what I'm actually advocating for is what I mentioned in my discussion earlier, and that is that we adopt the original resolution that was made by Councilwoman Beltramini and is being amended here through substitution, and then we have a public comment period and a study session as the culmination of that public comment period, and then we have an adoption of the more punitive ordinance. That's my 2 cents. I sense I'm in a minority, but I need to speak my piece, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Mayor,
The vote, Councilman Slater?
if I could just ask the city attorney one last question.
Yes.
You don't have an issue with defending this ordinance in court the way it's written?
No, either version
Either
we
version.
believe is defensible, yes.
Defensible?
Yes.
Mayor,
Councilman Slater?
I just think sometimes when we make our decisions, we need to defer to the people that have the expertise and the personal knowledge. And I believe that this is one of those times, so I will support B myself.
Further discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Howard?
No.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes. Motion passes. The next item is a resolution. Pardon?
As substituted.
Substituted, then we gotta have another vote. Sorry, thank you for catching it. Mrs. Bartholomew, the second vote?
Councilmember Howard?
No.
Councilmember Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, next is a resolution for a closed session that is on the table. I'm going to suggest that I approve of the recommendation of the city attorney and feel that we don't need a closed session, but if one of the council members needs a closed session, then we could do that. Does anyone feel we need to, based on the information we received? Okay, so we won't have this resolution. Okay, thank you. And it is up in the body of the regular meeting. Councilman Beltramini, just like, we put in the rules. Yeah. Okay, for consent agenda, are there any consent agenda items that you wish to have exempted, council?
I-7.
Pardon?
I-7.
I-7. Any others?
I-9.
I-9.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Howard?
I don't need to pull it out, but I was just hoping that we could correct for the record the title of I-4B and the acronym for SEMCOG with the G.
Oh, okay. Good catch. Thank you. It's right in the resolution. It's just wrong in the title. The resolution itself has SEMCOG. Okay. Can we have a resolution with exemption of I-7 and I-9?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilwoman McGinnis, that all items presented on the consent agenda are hereby approved as presented with the exception of I-7 and I-9, which shall be considered after consent agenda items as printed. Discussion? Vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Motion passes. I-7, Councilwoman Beltramini?
Madam Mayor, I ask that it be disclosed, that it be turned out because I am the vice chair of Troy Youth Assistance. And so, although that's a volunteer position, some may feel that I should not vote on this.
Council, what is your pleasure on having Councilwoman Beltramini vote on this? Does not have a financial interest. Councilwoman Kerwin?
She simply serves on the board and has for a long time. In fact, we've had, prior to Councilmember Beltramini, other council members who have, including mayor, served on the board as well. So no, this is not a legally financial conflict of interest, and so I would recommend that Councilmember Beltramini vote on this resolution.
Further discussion on that? Okay. Would you like to move the resolution I-7, Councilwoman Kerwin?
Resolved that Troy City Council hereby approves the request from Troy Youth Assistance asking that they be recognized as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license as recommended by city management.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Howard, that we approve the resolution as printed and read. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
And motion passes. I-9 is Liberty Investments LLC versus City of Troy. Councilman Howard, you asked for this?
I just wanted to vote against the resolution.
Okay.
That's why I had it pulled out.
Okay. Thank you.
But since it is pulled out, I think there's a policy issue that we should look at, not necessarily this evening, but you know, if there's a lockbox out of state, and you know, we're kind of at the mercy of whoever's operating that lockbox to timely process the payments, I would prefer that our ordinance refers to the postage date as opposed to the receipt date, and perhaps that's something we can look into in the future.
Further discussion? Do we have a resolution to approve I-9?
Fine.
Councilwoman Beltramini?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilwoman McGinnis, that we approve the resolution as printed. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Howard?
No.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have council referrals, council comments. Who would like the floor first on council comments?
I got stuff.
Okay, Councilwoman Beltramini, I noted that you gave us a few
I did.
items. Thank you.
When I go places, you get stuff. And particularly, I was thinking that as Councilwoman Kerwin read her thoughts at the beginning of the meeting about building community, I thought how timely, because I brought to you from the SEMCOG meeting, and it was simply passed out. There was no validation report or anything, but the Center for Michigan has spent the last 3 years holding community conversations around the state, and some of them were held here in Troy and in other Southeast Michigan communities. In fact, over 40% of them. And this is a synopsis of the report, and you can also download this from the Center for Michigan's website, which is www.thecenterformichigan, one word, all written out, .net. But they had over 10,000 people in exploring what we needed to do as a state to survive. And of course, since you've heard me talk about public input and civic engagement for almost 9 years now, I should bring you this report. They talked to 10,000 people and they got them fully engaged. And they talked about economic growth and quality of life, and the first item on the citizens' agenda there was to create a more friendly business and entrepreneurial environment, and one of the first things was to look at overhauling the tax code. And then they talked about a talented, globally competitive workforce, and one of the things was to improve K through 12 curriculum, which may or may not mean higher standards. Depends on who you talk to. Efficient, effective, and accountable government, and what I liked about that was the very first thing on the agenda was to have people, and people want to take responsibility, educate the public, engage them, and have them as well as government take responsibility. So those are the kinds of things you will find in here. And they talk about the methodology and the demographics and where the answers came from. So I bring you that. The other piece, and interestingly enough, Mary, you handed this out 3 weeks ago when we met. And much of these two documents dovetails. It's interesting that the learned folk from the Land Policy Institute and the lay people of Michigan have very similar ideas about things. The other thing I laid on your table was an article from the Nation Cities Weekly that came out when we met last in study session, and I didn't know how many of you get this, but it talked about cities not just saying we want to be safe. If you want to compete, how do you want to compete, what do you want to look like, and then make the investment in that. And if it is drawing an educated workforce, be they immigrants, the knowledge workers of the millennials, whatever that is, as a community, decide what that is and make that investment in the various components that are necessary. And so knowing that our own goals and outcomes are on the table, that is food for that thought as well. Those are my reporting issues. Now I have something else that I'd like to have us think about, and it wasn't just my idea, it actually came from a constituent, but then when I heard Sam Lamerato talk about the benchmarks on which the fleet maintenance people, fleet services people were measured for their award, I guess I'd like to see, as Mr. Zerlag, you talk about restructuring and budgeting priorities and all of that, it would be a really good idea to have matrix like that for every one of our departments. How do they compare to cities of all sizes? How do they compare to the private sector? Because the fleets were all public fleets, but they weren't all government fleets, you know, and so the metrics to compare our efficiency and our effectiveness and our creativity and how we could, and I'd like to see council look at all of those for the departments as part of the restructuring effort. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Before I go to someone else, I just want to call council's attention to the newspaper article that is on your table that's provided by Mrs. Bloom about Bob Davison, and invite you, if you can, to come on Wednesday. Bob has been a long employee, 18 years in the attorney's office, and so I commented to Mrs. Bloom about it today, and I said, oh, that was clever the way the invitation was done. So providing it again, because you know it's been a while since we got the email about it, because I think it's always nice to recognize folks when they're, if we can. I realize that not everybody can go to everything, but that's on the table there. Okay. Yes, Councilwoman Kerwin, you have some items?
Just
an item?
As we were talking about safety, I see that we have the executive director from the Troy Community Coalition, and I recently received, we probably all did, an email regarding an opportunity for teens to have a safe driving experience. And I would encourage people to contact Ann Comiskey at the Troy Community Coalition to find out more information about that. It sounded great. It's a full day, and I think that's really important. I do echo you, Mayor, when you spoke about contacting our local, I know that we don't know all driving places within the city, but we do know some, because many of our kids went to those. And so I do think it would be a good idea for our officers to contact those with these new standards. I do think that there is a universal signage out there now which has a cell phone and the X through it, no cell phones at the entrances, which would be helpful. I'm not trying to micromanage on that. However, Councilmember Beltramini brings up a number of things for council to look at, which reminds me that we have a number of things that we still need to do. We had talked about, you mentioned, Councilmember Beltramini, our goals and our outcomes. However, with this new council, we haven't really talked about our goals and our outcomes, and we need to do that. I know that Councilmember Howard had mentioned strategic planning, or whether we were going to look at it from a SWOT perspective, a big picture perspective of the city itself. All of those things take meetings. The retreat itself would take a meeting, and I think it's important that we pull out our calendars and take a look at meeting dates, because Councilmember Beltramini is right. When we're referring to our own rules, this is what, 3 years into this, nearly 3 years into this, when we're actually doing some changes. Our new council members haven't even had an opportunity to dot in, like most of us did when we were looking at the cost of government. Is that correct? Price, cost of government. To dot in those matrix, which we worked on long ago, and I think that would be helpful to really see and to add perspective. So I do think we need to look at our calendars and come up with some dates, and I think the sooner
Okay.
the better.
The other thing added on too, this is the time of the year we do an evaluation of the city manager and the city attorney, and we do them at 2 separate meetings, but it has to be part of a regular meeting, but then it's an exec session, because you have to request a closed evaluation. So if you two would be thinking about doing that, I had it marked because I know one year we went way past the timeline of when we were supposed to do it, so it's better to, you know, look at it. There may be some Mondays that we don't have a meeting scheduled for, that we may want to have a meeting scheduled for. Most people seem to keep their Mondays free if they can. We do realize some people do have vacation plans or plans with their family of being out of town sometime, but if a majority of council is going to be in town, we can get some of these things done. So Mr. Zerlag, if you want to give us some dates that are next, are you looking to have it on the agenda the next time, Councilman Kerwin?
Yeah, set the
Okay.
next Monday.
All right.
I can have
For-
Mary Redden contact council members to see about your availability, and just
Okay.
have the slate of dates.
Well, we could have the Mondays of July and August suggested, and then when we vote on it, we can indicate that at that time, unless someone has some other comments right now on it. Okay?
Our next meeting is July 26th.
Anybody else on council
Our next meeting
comments?
is July 26th.
Pardon?
So for July 26th, I'll have the slate of dates.
Yes, the next meeting is scheduled for July 26th. Unless we need to, do we need to schedule something for the 19th? Next Monday? Okay, well, I don't know, do you have a, can you come on the 19th? Okay.
I can't.
Can you come on the 19th? Okay. I think that since most of us here have said we could come on the 19th, we should try to schedule something for the 19th, but we have a resolution tonight, don't we?
Yes, and you'll have to suspend your rules.
Pardon?
Yes, and you will have to suspend.
Suspend the rules and then have a vote, okay, all right. I move to suspend the rules.
Support.
Moved by the chair, seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin, that we suspend the rules. The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schilling,
Yes?
Councilor Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming, oops, sorry, Horwath,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Motion passes. Do we have a motion for a meeting for July 19th?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
What issues do we want to discuss specifically at that meeting?
Well, I think that it's going to be a regular meeting, so there'll be regular agenda items that Mr. Zerlag would have. He said he had a whole plethora of items to bring forward that need to go on an agenda, and then we could add in the
Code of conduct.
code of conduct, and I don't think we're ready for the next study session on the boards and committees, because we gave the staff 3 weeks on that. Will it be?
You know, if I could have, if you don't mind, if I could just go to my desk, I have a list of items that I had spoken with staff about that we need to discuss with council, but I think there were 10 or 12 items. I can't recall them all. If I could have about 2 minutes, I'll go on my desk and bring it right back.
Let's take a 2-minute break.
Pardon?
Take a break.
Oh, and we're going to go to the study items anyway. I was hoping that you want to take a break here, come back here, and then go to the,
You want to take a break here and
We
go
can
back
sit.
and start at the,
We can sit for 2
start at the study room?
well, we have to have a vote on
Oh,
the meeting. Did you
Yeah,
want to have
let John
that?
go. We can sit for 2
Yeah.
minutes. It would be nice to take a break, but then we lose control and it takes 7, so let's just sit.
Well, Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Howard?
my preference is to not schedule a meeting tonight for a plethora of reasons, not the least of which it wasn't posted that we were going to be discussing meeting dates. And also, I think it is imperative that we provide as much advance notice as possible. And this is not a regular meeting because the regular meetings were adopted prior to the beginning of the current year. So it is, in effect, a special meeting because it's an unscheduled meeting. You can conduct whatever business you want at it, I suppose, but you know, it's not on the, it's not online. Nobody knew we were going to schedule a meeting tonight. We don't even know if Councilman Fleming can make it, but it would be my preference if we're going to schedule special meetings that it be posted at the point of scheduling so that there is notice.
Okay, Mrs. Bloom, what about adding to the regular meeting schedule?
It can be done, but for the reasons that are cited by Councilmember Howrlack, that you want to have full transparency, Council has routinely called special meetings instead of the regular meeting. It is possible to amend your schedule. However, 1 week in advance is probably something out of the ordinary. It can be done, but you certainly do have the ability to call a special meeting and to articulate in that call of the special meeting what items you will be discussing. And so because you do have that, it would be my recommendation that you term it a special meeting due to the lack of notice.
But we can call a regular meeting, we just have to amend our schedule of amendment meetings, of regular meetings, correct?
If council wants to amend the schedule, Councilman Howrlack is correct in that a schedule is posted. It's required under the Open Meetings Act to be posted at the beginning of the year. It can be amended if there is a need to amend it. However, it is my recommendation that because this is only a week beforehand, that you term it a special meeting. You certainly have the ability to do that. Call it a special meeting and to provide as much advance notice to the public as to the topics that are going to be discussed.
If we were going to schedule some meetings in August, which would give more than 1 week's notice, we could do that in regular meetings and put that on the amended schedule, correct?
That is permitted under the Open Meetings Act. We would need to publish it as quickly as possible after the motion setting the additional meeting dates was passed.
Okay, thank you. It's important to have that clarification for so that we do it properly.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Beltran?
I think we would be well served if we go ahead and schedule a meeting for next week, that it be a special study session where no permanent decision is made and lots of healthy discussion occurs. I mean, Mr. Zerlag didn't say he had pressing issues that needed our vote to make a decision, and we know that we have a whole list of things to discuss that's going to take significant discussion. So pick 2 of those things and move forward. I mean, we already have some background information on the code of conduct and the ethics, and that was already posted. We've already told the public that we're going to work on our goals and outcomes at some point, so we may be able to lay some groundwork with that. We've got issues that have been hanging on for more than a year.
Right, well, that's why I was interested in hearing the list. Because
yeah, let John get the
there
list
might be
and
something
we'll
more
choose 2 or
pressing.
3 of those.
Yeah, there might be something more pressing than ones, and it's just has slipped our list here.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Kerwin?
I guess here's my frustration.
Pardon?
I said, here's my frustration.
Okay.
But I have to breathe a little bit first.
What's that frustrating?
Well, really, we had, since 3 years ago, just about 3 years ago, when I joined this council, we talked about the once upon a time when there were, in fact, 3 meetings. And Councilmember Lambert had really stressed the importance of having that 3rd meeting. And we simply drifted away, and no matter how much it was called or how much we needed it, it just never happened. They weren't scheduled. They didn't happen. And we've had several conversations here at this table, including recently, on Councilmember Slater's proposal, which included, gee, we really need to do some team building and address different proposals. And yet here I look at this again as if we're bound by only having these scheduled city council meetings. Yes, Ms. Bloom, by law at the organizational meeting, one is required, any unit of government, any governance body is required to pass and set forth a list of meetings, but that in no way binds them as never adding a meeting after that to conduct regular business. That simply isn't true. So does transparency need to be here? Yes. But this is not a new idea that we needed to add a third meeting. This is something that has been brought up at this table time and time and time again. And we have poured in some things that used to be in a separate meeting, for example, like liquor hearings, which were rolled into regular meetings so that we would use our time better. So if there are issues that the manager has that need to be addressed, by gosh, let's address them at a regular meeting and then do an additional item or study session where we can also work together on some of the things we've talked to regarding team building and addressing something specific to council, just like the thing Councilmember Beltramini brought up tonight, where we're looking at a strategic way in the way we do business and in these interests that are defined at this table. That's my frustration.
Okay. Mr. Zerline, you had your list?
I have my list. I apologize for the length of time it took me to acquire it. Tonight, we have the engineering department presentation as a study item. We also have the timeline for the zoning ordinance adoption, which includes the subset of the form-based code. I have listed, and I discussed these with staff as well. Board committee assignments, I had given them until staff until August, the first week in August, to come up with their recommendations. We're going to have a presentation scheduled for the 26th as a study item on the essentially restructuring to date, and want to have a restructuring update essentially every quarter. And that'll take probably about a half an hour or so. I think tonight's going to take about an hour just with the engineering department. Again, we're currently working on the police department and the manager's office in terms of having an independent third party come in. I don't have quotations yet, but I plan on having them soon. I've contacted the International City Management Association to see what they can do, not only for my office, but for the police department as well. They may refer me to the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Can you hear me okay? We have
Just barely.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to what? Essentially, during the course of the balance of this year, we're going to look at essentially every department to find the best venue for service delivery. And that'll be as they come up. It would be our desire to be done with all departments by the end of this calendar year. We have the Community Affairs CMN cable casting issue. Right now, after engineering, our main focus that we're going to concentrate on with our restructuring committee is the Public Works Department for a consolidation effort. We need to talk about health insurance savings for employees as well as retirees. The retirement incentive that we're still working on with the actuaries, the police and fire departments. I plan on having in August an update on Safe Belt, as well as an update on Billy Casper Golf. And then it's very important that we talk about the status of our energy efficiencies that we're working on as well. So there's a host of items that we need to be discussing. I can't say what I could have for you essentially in 7 days, but within a couple of weeks I can identify proposed timelines for essentially all of these issues. I would like some latitude on the departments, because especially getting a third party to take a look at what we're doing, I can't guarantee their time schedule. In addition, we have consolidation efforts going on with the police department, with Madison Heights and, well, we already have Clawson in hand, but Madison Heights and Royal Oak for dispatch and jail services. You had also mentioned a performance evaluation of the attorney and myself. I take it those are on 2 different dates.
So here's a long list.
I know.
Okay. We're still at the point of determining if we can call a regular meeting for the 19th, or if we have to call a special meeting because there's only a week difference in the posting.
In 1 week, frankly, I can't give you a solid update on any of these items that I mentioned.
But you had.
I can in 2 weeks, but not
Pardon?
one. I can give you a solid update in terms of our restructuring efforts to date
Right.
in 2 weeks.
Right.
But
You said you had some regular agenda items, things that are,
regular agenda items come in almost daily from
Yeah,
various staff members.
right.
We hold
Okay.
them to council meetings.
right. So what is the letter of the law, Mrs. Bloom, on scheduling a regular meeting for the 19th at this meeting?
It is my recommendation that for the 19th, that you, because you do have the ability to call a special meeting, that is the avenue that is taken in this matter. You do, however, have the ability to add additional meetings and then to post those additional meetings as quickly as possible after this meeting. So if you wanted to add meetings, regular meetings, it is certainly acceptable to do that, and there is a requirement that it be posted as quickly as possible. Our agenda booklet would also need to be updated. It would need to be updated on the web page and everywhere else that we identify when there are regular meetings.
But we could post those tomorrow. If we vote on it tonight, we could post those tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Kerwin, or was it Councilman Slater? I don't know who was first.
Well, I think it
I
would.
saw a hand and heard a voice.
Go.
I think it would be a good idea for management to go ahead and look. I know that there's some reasons, for example, there are some reasons that we wouldn't have other Monday meetings on the list that's before us. But through the end of the year, if there are opportunities to add Monday meetings, I think that's the way to go. And then check with council. If you can't meet quorum, then you couldn't hold them. But if we could sprinkle, instead of laden the 2 meetings a month with so much, so that we don't get into the N item, which is really the crux of what we need to be focusing on, big policy issues during the study session. If we could sprinkle those early so that we can get in and really start working on those core critical issues in the N items, I think we'd be better served. We'd be far more productive.
Well,
And then those who can come, can come.
Mayor?
do we have did we
No.
passed a resolution to suspend the rules? But we don't have a resolution yet on setting okay, just getting the lay of the land here. Okay, Councilman Howard,
Councilman Slater was first, I think.
Councilman Slater?
Well, I was just going to propose a resolution that we add a 3rd meeting to each month for the rest of the year, regular meeting. And I don't have a calendar with me, but it seems to me that if we added a 3rd meeting to each month for the rest of the year, that maybe we can get this done by the end of the year. And maybe pick the Monday in between the other Mondays, if it's legal.
I'll support that.
That's a suggestion. Was that a motion?
Yes.
Moved by Councilman.
Wait a minute, maybe not.
We will need more specific dates because we don't hit a 1st and 3rd, and then there are other events that come along, such as elections and holidays and such, that have thrown the schedule off, so we would need to identify direct dates.
Okay.
I would leave that up to the discretion of management to, can I do that?
No.
No?
No, we have to have a vote here with dates. Councilman Beltrame,
Since at
on
least
this item?
2 out of the 5 remaining months of the year, we will be meeting on the 2nd and 4th Monday
Right.
because of elections.
The 3rd Monday.
We can say that we will,
The 3rd week of
the
each
3rd
month?
week of the month, or in cases where we already have a meeting scheduled, the 4th.
Good.
And does that work? And then you can fill in whatever those dates are.
We can pull those dates for you, Madam Mayor, if you'd
Pardon?
like
Can you
us.
get 'em?
We can pull those dates for you if you'd like us to do that, because
Okay.
the resolution should include what the dates are.
All right,
So
okay.
I'm happy
So
to,
can we
I've
pull
got my
those up?
calendar up.
I can give you the
For
dates
regular.
as,
Yeah.
the calendar is available to me. I can give you those dates now if you wish.
Okay, good.
Okay.
In July, we have a meeting on the 26th. In August, we have an election. The first meeting would be tied. We have a meeting on the 2nd. The 16th would be open. We have a meeting on the 23rd. The 30th is open. So would you prefer the 16th or the 30th in August?
16.
16th?
16.
In
16th.
September, the first meeting is Labor Day. The second meeting we have scheduled, the 20th is open. Would you like it on the 20th?
Okay.
In October, the first meeting is scheduled, the 11th is open, and the 25th is open.
11?
Okay.
11th?
11th,
Yes.
and then November.
And in November, the first is tied to the election, the 8th is the scheduled meeting, the 15th is open, and the 29th is open.
15?
15th would be better because the 29th comes between Thanksgiving and,
And in December, the 13th is open and the 27th is open.
13th.
13th?
That would be July 19th, August 16th, September 20th, October 11th, November 15th, and December 13th.
That's correct.
Councilwoman Beltrame?
Madam Mayor, and I was the one who jumped on August 16th, but that means that we will meet again on the 23rd and not again until the 15th of September.
13.
13th.
Okay. I
Because
mean,
of
that's
Labor Day.
still 3 weeks that we might be better served to stick ourselves at the 30th instead, so that management didn't have such a long span that they had to go if there was real business that needed to be
What's
transacted.
Labor Day?
Yeah,
The 8th, or the 7th,
7th,
7?
my son's birthday.
because it's late this year.
I don't care.
I don't know, it's up to you. I just throw that out for management if they'd like. I don't care.
We stick for the 16th for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you moving a resolution, Councilman Snyder,
I
for
am.
those dates?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
John, I think wanted to say
Oh, do we have a second, or you want to comment? Councilman?
I think, Councilman, go ahead.
Are you starting in July or August?
July
July
19th.
7.
July 19th?
No,
No.
she's saying that would take a special meeting, so.
No, she said if we posted it tomorrow. I asked her a couple times. She said her
I would have-
preference would be to
I
do the
thought it would
special
be a
meeting, but that
He's not.
by the letter
I
of
would
law,
have
we
the
could.
agenda out by
Pardon?
Thursday. The agenda's out on Thursday. Tomorrow, it's already Tuesday for all practical purposes. If you want to meet next Monday, it's already Tuesday, if you will. I
My
don't think I'll have
resolution
too
is to
much
start
for
in
you
August.
next week.
August?
Yes.
All right, I'll take out July 19th. Okay. Moved by Councilman Slater. Do we have a second?
I thought Mary said.
Councilman Kerwin, did you second it? Or Councilman Beltrame, did you second that?
I didn't.
Nobody did. I'll second it to get it on the floor. Okay.
Mayor? And the
yeah.
motion contained a time and a place.
Okay, moved by Councilman Slater, seconded by myself, that we hold regular council meetings at 7:30 in the Troy City Council chambers for August 16th, September 20th, October 11th, November 15th, and December 13th. Did that cover it? Okay. Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard.
I just have a question for management. Will we use these, well, obviously we'll use the dates because we're scheduling them, but I'm also looking at efficiency in your organization as well. I don't want the pendulum to swing too far one way or the other. These are 5 additional dates. Do you need 5 additional dates?
It's hard for me to answer that question, and I'll tell you why. I'm not sure what business is going to come up.
Yeah.
As far as the agenda, in terms of regular business is concerned, we've been putting them in green envelopes for the last, I'm told, 50 years. And I think I've got some of the original envelopes, but they come into my office every day. The issue that I'm concerned with primarily at this point is economic sustainability for the organization, and want to meet with council when I can as each department comes up. Now again, we've gone through several departments. We have several more to go. I can't give a real timeline on when I'm going to come back with ICMA and the manager's office, or when we're going to seal a deal with Plant Moran and Madison Heights and Royal Oak. It's going to take a while. The Public Works Department is a very large endeavor that we just cracked open, if you will, to work with them in that respect. The retiree health care issues and pension proposals that we have to work with the unions with is a process where I can't jam a deadline. But there are policies that we need to address. I know that I was asked to look at a series of ordinances as well. I'm going to need a priority on what ordinances you wish to provide staff to look at, because frankly, if everybody was 20 years old and we started with chapter 1, we'd all retire and not reach the final chapter. So I'm going to need some priority from the governing body of where you want us to go next. We're going to concentrate tonight on the zoning ordinance, which has 400 and some text amendments. It's time for that. I need to know where you want us to go after that ordinance. And we'll, again, we will meet at the pleasure of the governing body whenever you feel it's necessary to meet. Staff and I stand ready to assist.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard, aye?
And additionally, when we do, when management puts forward recommended dates for next year, if we can be realistic so that we don't have to do this again next year, and that's realistic on dates that we need, that's all I have to say.
Okay. So, okay, ready for a vote? Mr. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Howard?
No.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Shelley?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, we have 2 study items, so we'll take a,
Madam Mayor, are we not meeting next week?
No?
No.
they said they could,
No.
the items
No.
that we wanted to put, we couldn't get on.
You don't want to talk about code of conduct or ethics?
They'll have to add it to an end later.
Okay.
Maybe on the, for the 26th, we could have a shorter, regular agenda and then have all those things on the end. Okay. All right, we have 2 studies, so we'll be in recess and meet in the other room in 10 minutes. study items.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. As you know, we have a restructuring committee. It's made up of Assistant City Manager John Lamorato, Assistant Manager Mark Miller, our Purchasing Agent Director Susan Learstein, our Director of Human Resources Peggy Sears, and
Excuse me. Keep going.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
and Mr. Carlisle,
Eminem.
our consultant. And we've been working for the past 6 months with City Engineer Steve Van Dett and Assistant City Engineer, Traffic Engineer Bill Hootery to determine the best venue for restructuring the engineering department to be most cost efficient and effective. And this has been our most complex analysis to date, and probably will be from here on out, because it covers a whole spectrum of activities, which include administration and management of our rolling $100 million capital improvements program, specification development, survey work, inspection work from both the private and public sectors, stormwater management, traffic engineering, and real estate services. In the presentation you are about to hear from Mr. Van Dett and Hootery, we are going to show that the optimum balance between in-house staff and out-house engineering firms has been achieved. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Hootery.
We were asked to do a presentation of the restructuring study that we went through for our engineering. So what we want to talk about is talk a little bit about the department background, the restructuring study that we went through, a little discussion of billable hours and utilization rates, consultant costs for city costs, and then finally close with a look at our capital improvement program. The engineering department has been a hybrid department pretty much forever. We've used consultants. We use consultants now. We've used them since I've been here almost 15 years, and we were used before I got here. And we are currently using consultants when our in-house capacity is exceeded. So for services like design, inspection, those types of normal projects, as well as specialty services for technical studies, long-range planning, like a master plan, those types of services. Large-scale capital projects like Rochester Road that's currently going on now, and those types of projects where we have federal money, we actually have to do a secondary QBS selection process through MDOT. Because there's federal money involved, we can't use our selection process. So it's actually our 3 consultants have to submit like anyone else if they want to perform those services for the city. So that's on like the Rochester Road projects, that's what we're doing there. As well as testing services. We don't do any testing services in-house, so that's all done by consultants. We do have 3 consultants under contract for general engineering services, Hullroth and Clark, Orchard Hudson Climate, and Spalding Bedecker, as well as 2 consultants for testing, professional service industries and testing engineers and consultants. They're all under current contracts. I forgot to mention, we did try to insert 3 places for questions, just try and keep the presentation move along and take time for questions at kind of the end of each section. So what do we do with our staff and the consultants? We do core staff that Steve will talk about later, engineering administration that is primarily regulatory compliance. It is consultant administration and management, as well as planning and implementation of the 6-year capital improvement program. Engineering services, design, contract administration and construction for capital projects, right-of-way permitting, the private development review, as well as utility work. Survey services, topographic, construction layout. Inspection services, again, on capital projects, private developments, right-of-way permits, utility work, as well as soil erosion control. Stormwater management, this gets into our permit requirements, as well as soil erosion control, inspection and enforcement. Traffic engineering, which I'm becoming near and dear with over the last couple of years, is primarily related to planning, development, construction-related activities, as well as residential or business concerns. Real estate services, primarily related to right-of-way and easement acquisition for capital projects, as well as right-of-way easement acquisitions for private developments and remnant parcel sales. So we took a look back at our history. In 0405, we were a department of 30. We had 23 full-time positions and 7 part-time, operating budget of a little bit over $3 million. So we were a fairly sizable department. And this is what our organizational chart looked like back in 0405. And as any department or any business, any corporation, what have you, people leave, staff leave. So what we did is when a staff member would leave, we would evaluate that position against their current workload and their future workload to see if that position should be filled. So since that time, we've eliminated a part-time clerk typist. We had an engineering specialist, and this row here is these people are primarily responsible for the inspection services. So we had an engineering specialist position become vacant due to an internal promotion. We had a project manager retire, and these positions, these have not been filled. These were all eliminated. We had a civil engineer retire. Our traffic engineer left for a position at another community. His intern was eliminated as well. Early 09, notice the green arrows, or the green X's. Early in 09, we were asked to look at our department a little bit differently. We call this restructuring around 1. This is where we looked at our department a little differently. We looked at more as utilization of our employees, as well as duties that those employees performed, if they could be absorbed by other employees in the department or consultants. And so through that, we laid off an engineering technician, we laid off another engineering specialist, and we laid off an inspector. And that was in March of 09. Later in the year in 09, we entered restructuring round 2. December of 09, we laid off an environmental specialist, we laid off an engineering assistant, and we laid off the survey supervisor. As well as we laid off, or we eliminated, we didn't have people in these positions at that time, but with the reduction in staff that we experienced, we didn't really have staff available to train interns. So we eliminated the remaining 2 intern positions. And then more recently, we had another engineering specialist or inspector retire. So this is a color-coded organizational chart. This is kind of what we look like going into 2009-10. The green is our positions that are identified essentially as saving money. Steve's going to get into that a little bit more, what that means. The pinkish orange color are positions that were eliminated. And these are outside of just normal attrition. These were ones that were eliminated during our restructuring effort, as well as the 2 intern positions. And then the purple one is a transfer due to consolidation. And I think you saw in the manager's presentation. Real estate and economic development, when that department was eliminated, the economic development specialist went to the manager's office, and the senior right-of-way representative came under engineering staff. So again, that's what we looked like in 0405. Going into 2010-11, we've cut 50% of our staff. 15 positions were eliminated since that time, and then we had the 1 senior right-of-way position added to our budget. So a little more organized organizational chart. This is what we look like fiscal year 2010-11. So what we are now, 16 positions. We've got 12 full-time. We eliminated 11 full-time positions. 3 part-time positions. We eliminated 4 positions. So that's your 50%. We went from a department of 30 to a department of 15, and then we've added 1 through consolidation and an operating budget of a little bit less than $2 million. So that would be first strike. If you've got questions for me.
Councilwoman Kerwin?
If you could go back to core services, you didn't, anyhow, this is the first time we've seen this PowerPoint. And although we could have looked back at engineering notes before that, but because we haven't, I'll just ask you to repeat, just so I can have a good understanding under core services.
Okay.
You went through that pretty quickly, and it took me a minute to realize that it wouldn't randomly pop up on the screen.
We had it up there before, and the slides.
It was just too much.
The slides just got very busy. I
All
can
right.
go through and summarize them again.
Okay.
Under engineering administration, essentially what we're looking at is those positions are responsible for regulatory compliance. So all of our permits, any of those types of issues. The planning and implementation of our capital improvement program.
Okay.
Management and oversight of consultants.
Okay.
engineering services,
Design.
design, construction, contract administration for your capital project, as well as your right-of-way permits, private development review and permits, survey services, topographic and construction layout, inspection services related to capital projects, right-of-way permits and utilities, private development, stormwater management, state permit compliance,
Okay.
as well as soil erosion and sedimentation control, permitting and enforcement, traffic engineering, planning, construction, and development related traffic concerns, as well as residential and business concerns, and then real estate services, which has come to us through consolidation.
Any other questions? Okay, ready for the next section? Steve? Okay.
Good evening, Council. The next section, we're going to be talking about the restructuring study that we performed. As Bill indicated, the core services, we initially identified a core group of individuals that would perform those core services, except that in order to do that, we would need significant consultant assistance. This is the core group that would be consisted of the city engineer, deputy city engineer, traffic engineer, inspection supervisor, and the secretary. And essentially, the core group would be responsible for planning and implementing the capital improvement program, to provide compliance with regulatory compliance, such as floodplain, soil erosion control, stormwater, our state stormwater permit. We would be responsible for complying with that permit. And this would be done by the core group of staff here. So the positions that we reviewed for restructuring is everything else but that core group. That's the land surveyor, the civil engineer position, which we have 2, engineering specialist, GIS analyst, and part-time positions consisting of a senior traffic technician, and a clerk typist. We looked at these positions and we started with the part-time, and matching the workload with the position, we took the clerk typist position and we reduced the hours of that position from 8 hours to 6 hours per day, 5 days a week. Senior traffic and traffic technician, we reduced those hours by 40%. We have 2, so we have one working 3 days a week, the other working the other 3 days a week, and we have 1 day that overlaps. So we're able to use that day if we have something significant that we need, some traffic counts or something that takes a 2-person crew to accomplish. And then we added a part-time environmental specialist. Now, as Bill showed you earlier, the organization chart, we laid off our full-time environmental specialist. And we still have a need for that service, and we could either do it with our existing consultants or we could do it through part-time. And we were able to actually hire back our environmental specialist, and it's limited to 1,000 hours per year, and it saves well over 40% in cost. The downside, however, is the hours are focused primarily on stormwater, state stormwater permit compliance. There's some hours in there for general environmental things, but very, very few. So we really had to focus on what we absolutely have to do and get rid of stuff that we would normally like to do and would do, but we don't have the resources to do it anymore. Then we looked at the GIS analyst position, and initially we thought about privatizing that position, and in fact considering eliminating GIS altogether. But the more we studied it, we found that, number one, The GIS system was started in the early 80s. It's one of the best GIS systems in the state. We spend an awful lot of money investing into that system, and it's used by many, many departments on a daily basis. The problem with the GIS is that once you stop maintaining it, the data gets old, it's outdated, and the usefulness of it declines very rapidly. And we also found that there were a number of departments in the city, the primary users of the data, that really wanted to keep this service. So what happened was we split GIS into the 4 primary user departments: engineering, information technology, water fund, and sewer fund. So the cost of the GIS operation is split between those 4 departments. So the positions that were left, we looked at those positions that were left to look at were 1 land surveyor, 2 civil engineers, and 4 engineering specialists. Now, the engineering specialists, 2 of them make up the survey crew, and the other 2 are inspectors. So here we have 7 employees that we're going to look at for restructuring. And in order to look at those 4 staff members, we had to think like a consultant. And for us, it wasn't hard. Bill and I both spent some time in the consulting world, short, brief period of time, but nevertheless. So we have a pretty good idea of how the consulting world works. And in the consulting world, it's all about billable hours. How many hours can you bill to your client for the work that your staff does on their particular project? Our definition of billable hours is commensurate hours worked by engineering staff that would be transferred to a consultant if that staff were privatized. So what we had to do is we had to figure out how many hours those 7 people work that if they weren't here would be done by a consultant. So we looked at the land surveyor, and we had to figure out how many billable hours that land surveyor would have. And the way we did that is through our timesheets. Now, we have been recording, our staff have been recording hours on their timesheets like a consultant for the entire time that I've been here. I'm not sure when it all started, but in the consulting world, when you work on a project, you post your hours to a project. We do the same thing. It probably started in the 80s when we did our first MDOT project, and we had to keep track of our time, the cost of that work, and it had to be provided to MDOT in order for us to get our reimbursement for that cost. And it continued, and it's been going on. I've been here 10 years, and it's been going on ever since I've been here, and probably started well before that. And so we looked at hours primarily capital or enterprise projects, private development projects, and right-of-way permitting, things that if the surveyor weren't here would be transferred to a consultant. And we analyzed this by compiling all those billable hours, and we found that 81% of the annual total hours for the land surveyor would be billable. Now, what makes up the other 19%? Well, it's training time, it's time on the phone, it's providing information to the public, it's providing information at our counter, it's leave time, it's general time that if that staff person was not there, it would be absorbed by the core group that I identified at the beginning. The next group, the 2 civil engineer positions, we determined from their timesheets, this is annual billable hours, 81.8% of their total annual hours would be billable for capital and enterprise, private development, soil erosion permitting, and right-of-way permitting. And all of these categories of work, by the way, have a revenue stream associated with them. 2 engineering specialists, 88.1%, and it includes the same categories. And 2 engineering specialists, previous 2 were, I believe, no, the previous two were inspectors. These two are make up the survey. So with our billable hours, we set out to determine what the cost would be from by a consultant who would have to work those billable hours, and bill the city. Well, on the left side, you see the total staff hours for those 7 employees at 15,560 hours. That includes overtime. Our staff in the summertime, when we're building things, some have a significant amount of overtime because we work essentially the same hours that the contractor works. When the contractor's there till 7 o'clock, we're there till 7 o'clock. On the right is the billable hours, 12,964, and that's an overall utilization rate of 83.3%. That's all those 81s, 83s, all of them combined for an overall of 83.3%. So what is the cost of the staff hours versus the billable hours? Well, another thing we did is we split them out into 2 categories here. On the left is 73.3%, which falls into the capital projects for right-of-way, soil erosion permits, and inspections associated with those capital projects. On the right, 10% is the private development permits and inspections. Now, the column on the right, if that's all we did, then there would be no justification for the in-house engineering department. The consultant should be doing that work if that's all we did was the 10%. That 10%, that's driven by development, and as we all know, development is really low right now. The left side is our capital improvement program, which is significant. That's the majority of our work, and we carry that on throughout the year, including the winter time where we do water and sewer projects generally, and in the summer, of course, we do road projects. So we had to look at what our costs are and what the consulting costs are and apply them to those hours that showed on that previous slide. And in blue, you see the city cost. These are hourly rates, and in red, the consulting cost. And what we use for the consulting cost is the rates from the consultant with the lowest overall rates as determined by our purchasing department. For the city cost, we included not only the hourly rate for that individual, but we included everything in our budget that we are charged for. So it includes cars, gasoline, cell phones, office supplies, tools. Everything that is in our budget that we are charged for is in the rate for those employees. So on the left, the city cost based on the hourly rates, and the red column is the consultant cost. And again, this is with an overall utilization rate of 83.3%. And what we found is that if we were to privatize those 7 employees, it would actually cost us more money. It would cost us $192,000 to privatize those employees. Now, given our $100 million capital improvement program, which is over 6 years, by the way, we believe that we have achieved an optimum mix of staff and consultants. If we didn't have an optimum mix, our utilization rate would be down. It would go below 80%, maybe 75%. If we got down to 68%, then it's a break-even point. At 68% utilization, then a consultant could do our job for about the same cost. Positions that we studied are utilized at rates greater than 80%. As long as we're up above 68, and certainly we're at 80% now,